It is February 25th, 2026, and this is Annette, and this is what I call my Getting a Grip video. We're in the aftermath of the worst State of the Union in American history. That's because it was a State of the Union by a fascist. We have to start calling everything that's happening right now in America. We have to start calling it what it is. This is fascism. This is a person who's occupying the White House who has no legitimate license to be there, we'll just say. And last night's debacle was, I'm just so grateful that we had the People's State of the Union. I watched a whole lot of that. I didn't catch the entire thing. But the People's State of the Union is truth. They were speaking truth for 3.5 hours. I'll have to go back to watch the whole thing in its entirety. And the person who's currently occupying the White House that works for the Kremlin was spewing lies and hatred and vitriol and the most horrific racism imaginable. I mean, he doesn't really cease to amaze us. You gotta give him that. He doesn't cease to amaze us as far as how horrible he can be. How brazenly inappropriate and hateful that he can be. So yeah, it was great. The People's State of the Union was necessary. It was real America. It was the truth about America and its people. And what was going on in that Capitol building was what we have to stand against with every cell of our beings. It's always worse than we think it's going to be, isn't it? We think it's bad, and then it gets worse than we think it could get. And I really and truly am of the mind that we wouldn't have, as a collective America, we wouldn't have the energy to fight back in the way that we need to unless it's this extreme. Unless it would, until it got this extreme, there was still a lot more people that didn't understand the need to participate. I talked to somebody briefly today who mentioned that he doesn't really like to hear the news that much. Just an Uber driver, no, like nobody that I really knew, but a nice person. We were like-minded in our views of things. I do talk to my Uber drivers. And I always do. You learn a lot about people. And just from that little bit of a comment, I was really reminded of how often I bring up what's going on in this country, and how often when I bring up what's going on in this country, that people give me a knowing nod, and then they're very cautious and apprehensive to say much more. All right, that if you encounter that, I'm going to encourage us all to persist, to push a little bit more. Because everybody's life is in danger. Directly or indirectly, everybody's well-being is at risk right now. The true America is not being represented by this regime. This regime consists of a relatively small minority of the population This MAGA regime represents a very small segment of the population. Nobody that I know personally derives pleasure out of inflicting cruelty and harm and injury and even death on their fellow human beings. Nobody that I know enjoys that. And hopefully, nobody that you know enjoys inflicting cruelty and vitriol and hatred and even death upon fellow human beings. Nobody that you know derives pleasure out of knowing that somebody that they didn't agree with was shot and killed. Nobody here derives pleasure from that. The people that applauded him at that so-called State of the Union address are horrible, heinous, evil, despicable, inhumane people. And we cannot be swayed into thinking that that's how a lot of people are. We can't be swayed into thinking that most people are that way. And I'm going to tell you my take. I didn't watch it, but I definitely wanted to know what happened, so I made myself watch clips of it from Midas Touch and other pro-democracy channels. Shout out to Midas Touch and Move On. They really pulled together something amazing. We needed a counter to that. The horrible people, the sadists, those who behave in a manner that's reminiscent of Nazi Germany in World War II, those people are not normal. And part of their whole tactic is to be as infuriating and out of line and offensive and bombastic, as hateful, as inappropriate, as law-breaking as they possibly can for this reason. Hello, everybody. For this reason. Because they have to own the libs. Because the evil needs for us to get really upset. And that is a ploy. Because if you can get somebody so engaged and so, you've heard the saying, so angry that you can't see straight, so foggy with, so clouded with overwhelm. If they can get the rest of us, the normal people, the regular, everyday Americans that have average incomes, that don't have this insatiable greed and horribleness, if they can get us to focus on them, I mean, nobody can tell me that Trump wasn't going for the jugular when it comes to how horrible and infuriatingly inappropriate can I be. That is the goal. And I'll tell you why that is the goal. Because it has the potential to take us off of our game. Because when we're so angry we can't see straight, we also can't think straight. And when we're not on our game, we can make mistakes. We can falter. We can be less than because we're so in our emotional state. So this is what I want to say about that. Be emotional. be horrified, cry, be traumatized, and process that. And then stake your claim to peacefulness, to being able to hold those two things in our awareness at the same time. That is a lofty goal, a seemingly impossible feat. But I'm here to tell you right now, it's not impossible. And at the People's State of the Union, we saw amazing examples of that. And they're really profiles in courage. These people are really heroes. Some of the people that represent different states, different parts of this country are the upper echelon of competence, of dignity, of respect, of goodness and goodwill. And most of all, they're real warriors and they're real leaders. And we saw a lot of them last night. Those that are able can hold the anger and the rage and the fury and the level-headedness and the clarity to be able to acknowledge the rage and to also at the same time be clear-headed and effective in doing the work that needs to be done. Do not let go of your peace. Today is going to be my peaceful day, said the monks. Do not let go of your peace. The monks walked to Washington, D.C. That wasn't just because, we want to see the big draped picture of Trump's mug on the Department of Justice building. Yeah, they're strong, brave fighters for democracy. That's what we saw last night. And it's not the first time that we have seen that. This time that we're in just reminds me of how many times in history that there's a kind of pendulum that swung way, 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 way over in one direction that was the most horrible thing you could ever bear witness to that humanity was having happen to it. On the flip side of this horror, on the other side of this horror, on the other side of this hellscape, what we have, what's building, and what we will have on the other side of this hellscape is people like you and I, that during this time of turmoil, of fascism coming to knock at the door, during this time, you and I have found skills and abilities that we never knew we had. People's commitment to our democracy and our United States Constitution has grown in leaps and bounds, just monumentally. People's caring about what happens to this country has gone from, well, I don't know, I don't pay attention to politics, it's too much for me. Most people are paying attention, even if they're saying, oh, I don't really pay too much attention, that upsets me. But if it's upsetting them, then they must be paying some semblance of attention. I think that the worst thing that we can do is watch that monstrosity on that podium last night, leaning, glaring, calling the Democrats crazy. They're just crazy because they didn't get up and applaud the 35 times, whatever, convicted felon who's all over the Epstein files. They didn't want it. That's cocaine concentration camps where children are screaming and crying, ripping families apart, violently assaulting. This is all under his watch because he wants that. And he literally stood there, leaning on the podium like he can't even use his legs anymore, yelling that this is the hottest country ever. Well, yeah, with all the removing all the Paris Climate Agreement guidelines, at least. It'll be the hottest country ever, but that's gonna be worldwide. Yelling at the Democrats that they're crazy. Why are they crazy? Why was he so angry at the Democrats? Because they wouldn't stand up like his little lapdog puppies on the MAGA Republicans that would probably walk over water for him. It's a cult. And they're angry that we notice, that we know that they're trying to turn this country into a fascist regime. We know it's wrong, and they know how angry we are, and mostly they know how committed we are. Because you know what happened in Minnesota? The unforgivable events happening in Minnesota and other places in this country were such that, just like when Putin invaded Ukraine 4 years ago yesterday, they thought that because I mean, based on the evidence of the past 20, 30 years, they thought that we were a complacent populace. They thought that we were just like, oh, well, we don't know much about the Constitution or democracy, and so just have at it. Steal our families, ruin our communities, destroy everything, because we don't know how to defend ourselves. Because we don't even know what we're in anymore. That's what they were counting on. What they got was, oh my God, these people, maybe they're afraid, but they're still showing up. They're still protesting. They're not backing down. That's what the MAGA Republicans got. That's what Putin's puppet got. And when Putin invaded Ukraine, let's remember, he thought he would take it in 3 days. It's 4 freaking years later. The people have the power. Will we suffer? Well, we're damn well suffering now. Will Ukraine suffer? Boy, they certainly have had their share of suffering, and it continues. But the one thing that we must defend, that it's on us to defend, and for some of us to risk it all. Those who feel called will risk it all. Because democracy, and for humanity to live free as much as possible, and to strive for that for the rest of humanity, for the rest of time, there is no more noble cause. There is no greater legacy than to stand up for one's country, for one's democracy, so that even if you don't make it, the future generations make it. And that's what this country was founded on. That's what the civil rights movement was founded on. That's what the Civil War was about. Live free. We have to live free. And if we somehow, by some terrible, fateful thing that happens, if we don't get to see democracy win in the end, Martin Luther King didn't get to see civil rights happen, the rights they're trying to take away. Many have not seen the result of the fruits of their labor. But that's not what was the most important thing to them. In World War II, we lost I don't know how many millions of brave soldiers in the world, but every single one of them went into battle knowing that they could likely lose their lives. But the cause of democracy was and still remains that important. They didn't do it for themselves, they did it for the future generations. So for us to continue to look at these weak, pathetic, poor excuses for human beings, pretending that they're God following, God fearing Christians, and that they have some kind of preordained right to be better than us and to be richer and to be privileged, that we think that that's strong, that we think that they have this incredible power over us, that's the ruse. Because I'll tell you something, I have a suspicion that a lot of them are looking behind them to see who's following them. A lot of them are wondering if they're going to really ultimately be caught and thrown in prison. Because they're on the damn wrong side of history if there ever was one. And we, the people, are on the right side of history. And we, the people here who are pounding the pavement every single day, that are showing up for democracy each and every single day, we are the ones that have the power that they don't have. Theirs is the same mentality as people that think the more money they have, the more powerful they are. Well, then why do they need more and more and more billions? Why do they need to be the first trillionaire? Why do they need all that? If they feel that they're already inherently powerful humans, these people are weak. W-E-A-K, weak, posing like they're strong. And that's why Trump got so mad at the Democrats for doing the appropriate thing, which was to not stand up and to betray their own personal constitutions by standing up for a freaking murderous, fascist dictator Putin puppet. The list is long of all the horrible things he is. He called them, what did he call them? Stupid? Crazy? Is that a strong human being? Calling people who are decent, who want to help one another, who want democracy to work for everybody, who want people to not be thrown into concentration camps, no matter what, for any reason at all, let alone innocent children and young women that we don't know what's happening to them. Yeah, the Democrats, they're crazy because they didn't stand up and give him an ovation. Can't even believe this is where they are. This is where we are. There was a time that this was unfathomable, that this would ever happen in the United States of America. It's extreme. So as extreme as it is, yes, you didn't have to watch it. I didn't watch it either. I just saw clips of it afterwards, and we all knew what it was, and I talked about that yesterday. As extreme as it is, we need to be extreme in the other direction and not look at the extremeness of what they're doing to the point where we let it weaken us. That's why most people didn't watch it. Maybe subconsciously we all kind of know, if I watch that, I'll get weaker. What we put our attention on increases. And I think the low viewership last night was I mean, when I was checking out the People's State of the Union, I was seeing 147,000 people and up watching all at the same time. It's extremely one way because, well, part of the fallout from that is that we get extreme in the other direction, and we're in a time of extremes. So let's feed our consciousness 3/4 of the time with what we're doing to change this hellscape. And maybe 1/4 of the time just seeing what they're doing, just so we know what we're dealing with. There was a time in my life when I was following the news, and this was like in the 90s, and people were all like, "Oh, I don't watch the news because I'm so spiritual and it just upsets me." Really, people would ask me why I watch the news. You know what I would say? Because then I'll know what to pray about. I want to know what's going on because I want to know where if you don't pray, in intentions or, positive visions for the future, I want to know because I want to know where I'm needed. And I'm going to tell all of us here, we're all needed right now. It makes me a little crazy when people are going around thinking they don't have a purpose and they don't know what to do with their lives. There's a plenty lot to do. And maybe, if you start a group in your community where you talk about what's going on in this country and what we can do to save our country, there's a life purpose right there. There is a life path. Or attend one of those groups. There's a life purpose. There's a life path. During these times that we're in, I'm really amazed that anybody would feel like they're not sure if they have a purpose. I mean, I think the soldiers that stormed the beaches of Normandy in World War II weren't all going around going, "Oh, I don't know, I don't feel like I have a purpose." Their purpose was to help to liberate the world from fascism taking over and being the way of life from that point on until people were able to shut it down. I know it's horrifying, but just remember that their being horrifying is part of the tactic. Because most people, when they're horrified, they want to turn away and they want to ignore that it's happening. They want to bury their heads in the sand. There's this quote that I've seen many times that says five, what is it? The 5 most dangerous words. I had to count. Maybe it will go away. That's what they're hoping. They're hoping that they can beat us down enough. And boy, are they doing a great job of that. They're really counting on being able to beat us down enough to make us feel like, well, look at JD up there and look at MAGA Mike and look at Trump and look at this is part of the ploy too. Look at all those MAGA Republicans and they're cheering. Sounds like they're at a rock concert. Oh my goodness. Look at how loud they're being. Maybe Trump is doing something good if they're that excited about it. And on that note, don't think that so many of those rallies that people weren't being paid to be there back in his campaign rally days. There's a whole lot going on that we're not able to see, including the concentration camps, because they know once we know, there's going to be hell to pay for them. I'm sure the Nuremberg trials weren't very comfortable for the Nazis that participated in the most horrific genocide. And that's what Trump is attempting to do in America. I have heard about a couple of concentration camps that were planned to be built that have been shut down by those communities. This is not a regime that just quits that easily. We have to not take our eye off the ball at all. But when you put your eye on that ball, keep it in your mind that we are collectively going to hit that ball out of the park and we're going to hit a home run for democracy. And along the way, we'll get to know one another. We'll start talking to one another again. We'll start to recognize what we've done to let our communities fall apart and to actually allow people to feel like in our country, you're on your own, you're all alone. I don't care. It's every man for himself. It's every woman for himself, for herself. No, we're going to change all that because that's part of the healing. That's part of the healing. So before I go today, I want you to know that I did write a Substack. And if you're here, you are on my email list. Oh, Thomas, I'm sorry you just showed up. I'm just about winding down, but you can watch it on replay. The Substack is entitled Are We Dead Yet? And it's about what's going on, especially about the concentration camps. So I'm going to beg and plead with you to help me to get the word out. Everybody's voice is important. And I have this Substack. I write articles very frequently. I don't get paid for them. There's a lot of things I don't get paid for. That's not the most important thing. It's nice to get the bills paid, but that's not the most important thing is that we save our democracy. That's top priority. That's number one on my priority list in terms of what I'm doing for the collective. Without our democracy, we're nothing. We have nothing. Without our democracy, with the plans that they have, we're North Korea. So please share and please restack my articles and these lives you can restack too. So thank you. Feel free to leave me a comment, a question if you have a question. And those of you that watch me on YouTube, which I think is everybody here, maybe not everybody, but most of you, I will do a video in a little while and upload it. Thank you for the hearts. They help. And keep the faith. Don't spend too much energy thinking about what they're doing. Remember, what we put our attention on increases. So let's make the amount of time we spend activated and paying attention to the work that's being done. Let's keep much more of our focus on that, most of our focus on that. Their day is coming. Don't worry. Act. Okay. And with that, I'd like to say namaste and I'll see you tomorrow or later on. Okay, see you. Bye.